You are golden, you are good enough, like your fire from within. You're inspired, you inspire us, it's gonna be all good again.
Welcome to the Roar Indie Author Interview Series. I'm your host, Brianna. Today we have with us Led Bradshaw to talk about his books and his inspiration. So welcome to the podcast, Led. Thank you so much for sharing some of your day with us.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Oh, I'm so excited. So let's talk a little bit about your books. But first, what inspired you to be a writer?
Oh, wow. What inspired me to be a writer? Comic books. Well, it all began with comic books. I was a big comic book geek growing up, and just loved like Spider-Man, loved Superman and Batman, and those comics really got me started. And as a kid that was always drawing, well, I remember my mom saying that I was drawing like before I could hold a pencil, or like around that time. So I was always trying to like draw my own superheroes and draw my own stories. And it wasn't until like I was around in school, I think maybe my 10th grade, the creative writing teacher really got me into writing. So I just used that to say, well, I wonder what kind of comic books I could make now. And so, just started applying that. So everything is always centered around like my love for comic books and cartoons and just everything fun. That's all I wanted to do.
That's awesome. So you were actually an illustrator before you were an author.
Yeah, in practice, yeah. By hobby, so that was like what I was doing. I was like an illustrator in training.
Oh, that's amazing. Which books or book of yours is part of the Roar series?
The Adventures of Jake Jetpulse is a story that was actually inspired by my son. And my son Jacob was diagnosed with autism at the age of 4. And after receiving the diagnosis, I started to look for ways that I could help him out and really help pull him into learning. We did see, like, his teachers started to see, like, that he was very self-directed. He was, his special interests were superheroes, but sometimes it would get like distracting to the lesson plans because all he wanted to talk about was superheroes. So I started looking for different ways, like talking to his speech therapist, occupational therapists, and finding the best way that I could help him out. And then I came across art therapy while I was Googling, like doing some research. And that's something I could do because my whole life I've been drawing, and that's all I ever wanted to do. So I just started finding a little bit of like lessons that I could do with him and incorporate into his daily routines. So every day after school for 25 minutes, we would sit and draw together. I would throw the crayons down and we would start drawing together. And I would try different exercises. One was using colors to express your feelings. And that was very helpful because I would use like colors like blue for sad, or yellow for happy, red for angry, and this was a way for him, for a child with a speech delay. It was really helpful for him to identify the colors with how he was feeling, and that way I could engage him and ask him certain questions about his day. And when he didn't have the words to express himself, he would say, "Dad, I'm red today. Dad, I'm yellow today." And I understood what he, what he meant. And we went on, this is over the course of like weeks, months that we did this together. And there was another exercise, I remember, it was to draw yourself as a superhero. And it was supposedly a lesson to highlight your best traits, to, what you like about yourself. So, that was actually really cool because that's what made everything just launch itself into space, because he started to draw himself as his own superhero, and he had this whole universe in his head that he started to draw, and every day he would draw himself as this character and all these little adventures, and I thought it was really amazing. So I started to draw the character myself because I thought it was pretty awesome, because, wow, this is a really cool idea. But I started to use the character as a way to teach him, like, just everyday things. So like for instance, his nightmares, all the monsters and creatures and bad things that he saw in his nightmares, we would sit down and draw them the next day. And they became the villains of the story, or they became like different characters in the story. And when we give them names, and either silly names or like silly scenarios and stuff, I would also go as far as using like arts and crafts activities, like paper plates as like tiki masks to put on his bed, and like little water bottles full of water, and I would call it monster repellent spray to spray him down. Yeah. So all of these things like became part of like the Jake Jetpulse universe, and which is why we have characters like Mars the Troll and Marvin the Goblin, because these were names that he named them, so that he wouldn't be afraid of them anymore, and then they just became incorporated into the story.
That's awesome. So what started as the mechanism to help your child turned into something that you could do together and both got something out of. Like, what a gift. What a gift.
Yeah. And initially it started out as flashcards. I did it all basically to teach him how to read, and I would work with his teachers, and I would actively show them what I was doing, because he loved talking about superheroes, and I knew he needed help with like his sight words and like reading, like, and like putting together like basic sentences. So what I started doing was making beginners books, and I would use his characters. I would interpret his characters by drawing them myself, and this also made him like he wanted to know what was happening. So he started to learn like run and jump, and I would do basic sentences like Jake will run. Jake can fly fast. Jake can run fast. And then one day he just started to pick it up, and I was like, "Holy cow, he's doing it!" Over time. So I made like beginners books for the kids in his class, and then it went from the kids in his class to another classroom, and then another teacher from another classroom was like, "Hey, do you have any more books?" I'm like, well, I guess I could make a few more. So then I started turning them into like little activities and things. So I made activity books and beginners readers, which are really fun. And then I figured, well, let's start telling the story about like who Jake Jetpulse is and his team. And we wanted to create like relatable characters who were you had a hero who is on the autism spectrum, and learning how to use his powers, and as he goes along, because he's young and his team and his friends are young, and it's from a diverse group of kids, that are all coming together to save the world against the Goblin Hive Queen. And we thought it was really a great story to have these characters who have, I don't like to use the word obstacles, but like like to go past their challenges. We see them as like as superpowers and not like weaknesses or things like that. So the way how we developed the story was that, to give you an example, like the headphones that he wears in school, he has a set of noise-canceling headphones, and he doesn't like to wear them because he says the kids make fun of him. So I incorporated them into his super suit, and what they do is they focus his powers. So like when his powers are disrupted because of his sensory processing, like his sensitivities and such, whenever the superhero's powers are disrupted, that's when they go wild. And so it's not a weakness, it's just a means to control and focus his powers so he can use them. And we thought it was an excellent idea, and by breaking up autism into like the hallmarks of what it is and putting that into the personalities of the characters, it makes them more relatable, and it also opens up the conversation, because now the readers are seeing a visual, like something they can relate to. They can see it in their cousins, their brothers or sisters, or like a neighbor. Like now you can understand why certain, like why there are certain nuances, why they, like why they do the things they do. Like it helps create that understanding. So it's been a lot of fun, like doing that, and it's also pretty cool that that he has his own T-shirts and stuff.
No, I think it's absolutely amazing. Like and also I just picked up on this too. You both in your young years were inspired and like kind of obsessed with superheroes. So it's interesting that he has now, like, your passion as a child, what inspired you, is now like you've created that because your son inspired you. But you know what I mean? It's like a full circle kind of moment. I think that's so awesome.
Yeah, thank you. And what's even more wonderful about the series itself is that that Jake is the co-creator. So he's actively writing stories, and I'm drawing them. So the stories are all created by him. The characters, the entire universe is all created by him, and I'm doing all the illustration. So, which is great.
Yeah, that's awesome. Where what does it mean for you to have your books featured in the Roar Initiative and the Golden Ticket to Literacy?
It's an absolute honor, to tell you the truth. I mean, it's really amazing to see what has been done, like, for kids now. I wish they had something like that when I was in school, to be able to go to, like, a vending machine and choose a book, and then and that's the amazing thing about it, because there's so many, like, wonderful authors, and there's so many cool titles, and there's so many ways that that stories that stories can be spread amongst kids, because it's really cool. I remember a lot of the titles I used to read as a kid, and being able to share them with my friends, and that's how, like, my library started to grow, and my willingness to read. You know, like, it expanded my vocabulary. There's so many things, especially my creativity, because I went through a lot of paper drawing stuff, and being a very visual kid, it was one of the things I used to do. I loved to read so I could try to envision the scene in my head before they adapted everything into movies. So, no, yeah, eventually. And take a note, Hollywood, we have some very interesting stories here. But, yeah, there's some very interesting stories. Just check out one of these vending machines. And, for real. And it's a really amazing honor, though. It really is, to be a part of that, and, like, to be a part of something that's going to bring, like, happiness and elevate children's minds and stuff. That's really what we wanted to be a part of.
I think that it's so great. I only know one other author who has created a story for autism. She's not part of the Roar series. And then if you just go into the umbrella of, like, differently abled individuals, you're the only other person I've talked to that's written a book that, besides myself, that caters to a community, a niche community that, you know, I think needs to be represented in books. You know, there's a lot of people who have intellectual disabilities, physical disabilities, and that doesn't mean they can't be superheroes in their own right. You know, it just means that the way they approach something is different, you know, and that doesn't make it anything other than different. So I love that you have kind of shed a light on your son and autism. And I think it's a great topic that we kind of need to remember, that not all of our kids, you know, think and can follow the dots the same way, you know, and it's okay to go outside the lines. It's okay.
Right. Exactly. I always felt like it's like everybody has, like, this story. The hero's journey belongs to everyone, and it's great to see the interesting, an interesting and refreshing take on a story, especially a superhero story. It's told by a child, and I thought that is the way how even, like, the generation that sat in front of the television on Saturday mornings. And that's the way how we envision superheroes, those larger-than-life characters. And it's kind of cool to remove myself from it and just see how my son interprets the world through these characters. It's a lot of fun. And it's great because I feel like putting superheroes back in a child's hands the way it's supposed to be, and that kind of imagination where they can just hopefully, like, see, like, our characters and envision themselves in these characters, and then, like, that's what we hope for.
Absolutely. I love that. So what advice would you have for someone who's aspiring writer or even an illustrator, because that seems to be where your wheelhouse is?
My advice would be And this is funny because I was speaking to a young man yesterday, and who is really, really passionate about treating his own story. And I remember telling him, do not worry if, like, when you have that feeling, that doubt that no one's going to like it, don't worry about those things. It's like there's, focus on telling your story. Focus on telling your story. It does not matter, don't worry about if people are going to like it. Like, this is something that you're meant to do. It's, the way how I see it is that, like, and I explained when I was a kid, all I ever wanted to do was draw Saturday morning cartoons. And, life kind of throws, like, a lot of curveballs at you, but, like, when the universe, the universe is not going to let you do anything else. Your true passion is there. Focus on that. And it's like, wow, there's so many things that I want to say about, like what could I recommend, what could I tell somebody? Like, rejection is, also too, rejection is one of those things where it's, rejection is just another step ladder into, like, to success, to elevate to success. So you're going to hear no, you're going to hear people tell you that they don't like something. Always be open to critique, but never, but, always follow, like, your heart when it comes to your writing, and tell your story. That's the most important. There's always going to be someone there who's willing to read your story, who's going to connect with your story, and that's really what matters the most.
So people who are interested in your books, where can they find you?
Our books, you can find them on Amazon. As a matter of fact, all of our titles you can find on Amazon, and for more information, you can check out our website, which is www.jakejetpulse.com. And we're also on Facebook and Instagram, and not Twitter. Okay, Facebook and Instagram. Yeah, that's where we are. So, yes, we try to spread it all over. We're making it so we can be easy to find.
Oh, I think it's great. Led, thank you so much for your time and sharing your inspiration. What a poignant and absolutely fantastic thing to share with us. I love that your son is your inspiration and that you're making him a superhero. I don't know, I think that kids are cool, and they sure teach you a lot. So thank you for sharing your story with us.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much for having me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. And until next time, we hope y'all are having fun.
You don't